Welcome to a BS podcast. I am your host, Bobby, along with my co-host, Mark, and we are going to be discussing a little bit on the trades this evening. Both of us are in the trades. Both of us are union workers. I still haven't decided if that's something that I should boast about or not.
Yeah.
But
hasn't been bad for us yet, I guess.
No, it hasn't been bad for us. But I also grew up in a house where my dad was union, and I watched him get the shank when the company sold. And the union didn't do a whole lot for the folks that were at that facility. So, but anyways, that's not the topic of this evening. So, actually, we don't really know what the topic is. We just know we're going to talk about the trades. And I guess we could kind of start out by a little bit of history on where we got into the trades. Kind of what we do.
Oh, man.
That way, at least people have an idea of where our opinions are coming from.
Well, where'd you get into the trades, Bob?
So, I guess my deal was my whole family has been either mechanics. I say my whole family. My older two brothers and my dad. My dad growing up, my dad always worked on cars at home. And him and my mom had their own business for a period of time. But most of my life growing up, my dad worked at a limestone mine, and he was either an operator or a heavy equipment mechanic. And then, like I said, my dad and my older brothers all worked on cars at the house. So I always grew up around stuff being tore apart, getting fixed, and put back together. So, of course, me not being very smart, I thought that was the only thing I could do. So that's the path I went down to. And I did go to a vocational school when I was in high school for auto mechanics, which was a horrible idea because, well, auto mechanics, I don't know why I ever did that. That was awful. I guess it was experience, but I did not like it. I still don't like working on cars. And working on cars, I think I was a car mechanic for what? I started working in a dealership in 99. And I got out of the dealership in, Hadley was born in 06. I got out of the dealership in 05. Because it was before my daughter was born. Quit working at dealerships, and I went to a specialized trade, which kind of led me into ag and heavy equipment and truck. I went to a fuel shop, and I worked in a diesel injection repair shop. Started out there as their garage mechanic. And then started learning how to rebuild injection pumps, injectors. Did a little bit of turbo stuff, but not a lot because if we had to do any balancing, that had to go to the mothership. We didn't have the stuff to balance turbos at our location. But we definitely did some minor turbo repairs, if you will. Did quite a bit of mild, what I would consider mild performance work to people's daily driver diesels, and we did get into some stuff that was pretty serious. Like we did a fuel system for a diesel drag truck there. That was that was entertaining. Those people's, I always thought tractor pullers and truck pullers were crazy, but drag racers are even crazier when it comes to spending money. But basically, yeah, I was there for quite a while, and then bounced around for a while. Um, Worked with Mark as a mechanic for a municipality, and that kind of got me really wanting to change what I was doing, because I just didn't like wrenching on stuff anymore. And while we were at the city, we really brought um, all the repair work in house. So we were doing anything from repairs to upfitting trucks, and that really got me into the welding and fab side, which is what led me to changing my trade from a mechanic to a welder, which is what I still currently do. Which was what actually due to Mark's. That's funny. God, you are a bad influence on me. I went from being a mechanic, and I was getting pretty fed up with that, because Mark quit his job while I was on vacation.
If this thing's just going to be a blame game, I'm going
home. But I was like, I kind of decided I just wanted to be a welder. I didn't want to do mechanic work anymore. And Mark says, hey, there's this boat place hiring. And I really didn't want to go to a production weld job. But I think I was mad because I applied for it, went and took a weld test, and got hired. and left, and I went and started TIG welding aluminum, which was a fantastic job. I actually enjoyed that job very much.
You were always really happy.
I was. I enjoyed that job. And the weird part was my idea behind being a welder was I wanted to actually work in a fab shop, to where I was, basically handed a print, and the only thing I really wouldn't have been doing was like burn work, like CNC or plasma or laser, water jet. I'd basically get a cut sheet, and a print was my idea of a welder. And I actually applied for some jobs like that at some of the local fab shops, and they paid less than a mechanic. And like, you were going to be doing your own brake work, roll your own material, weld your own material. I mean, you were basically doing stuff the only thing you really weren't doing was if it was a product that required paint or primer. The one place I know they had people that just did the paint primer work. If the part required that. And those jobs were paying less than what it was as a mechanic, and I thought, there's no way. And when you showed me that production TIG welding job, and they were paying, at that time it was $6 more an hour, $7 more an hour to be a production welder, I was like, well, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So I did production welding for a while, and then, of course, COVID hit, and since I was production welding in a manufacturing facility, that wasn't considered essential, so I got laid off, and I was home for, I think I was off for 6 weeks. And I was sending you pictures because you were still working.
Yep.
Because you were a mechanic still. And your job was essential. So you were getting up and going to work every day. I remember sending you pictures from the gun range.
Oh, yeah. I remember getting a lot of those pictures from people. Everybody out having fun.
Now, that doesn't mean I was actually sitting at home screwing around for 6 weeks, because I actually was...
You were getting paid to go to the gun range.
Well, but I was still working for myself, because I have a small shop here at my house. And once people realized I wasn't getting up and going to work every day, I did have work coming in to my shop at home. And then I moonlit doing boat repairs, weld repairs for a local boat company. And so that guy figured out that me and him were talking, and what was it? He called and asked me to come in and weld some parts when I got off of work, and I was like, well, I can come in now.
That was a pretty good gig you had there.
It was. Other than that guy he wasn't very smart.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't a good businessman. He was always, it's kind of like now. I mean, he was always in a hurry, and he waited till the last minute to do certain things, and it was like just poor planning.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty good gig, and it was like, because that was, I know there was a couple times I showed up, and it was like, for what he wanted to pay, I told him, I was like, I'm not, the deal we had was all I had to do was weld for this guy. When I was building stuff.
Yeah.
Now, repair work was a little different. I didn't want somebody else prepping a repair for me because, well, them guys had no clue what they were doing as far as repair work comes from. But doing new fab, he's got guys he was paying $12 an hour. He could have had come in and, I mean, as long as they could read a tape measure, they could cut parts.
Yeah. You got to put your name on some pretty cool builds, though. I mean, he did some real interesting stuff. It seemed like for a while there, though, you had more welding equipment than he did.
Yeah, well, the one job we did, I rented him a machine. I rented him one of my machines, and then I went in and used my machine.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to, when I went in there, he originally wanted to pay me on a 1099, but he wouldn't pay my shop price to come in and do it on a 1099. Well, if I'm doing it on a 1099, that means my insurance would have had to cover the work.
Mm-hmm.
And with what he wanted to pay on a 1099, it wouldn't. So we came to an agreement. He would pay me, I would be his employee, but I would get paid the same as what I was getting paid at my other boat job, where I was welding at a boat manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
And so, well, it was a little bit more, but not by much. And but that, and then he supplied everything.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I did there was I showed up with gloves and a hood.
Didn't you get him to buy an ESOP?
No, I got him to. He bought because he had a Miller 350 MP MIG machine that was set up with a push-pull gun, and his original idea was he bought that because you could automate that. You could set it up on a track machine to weld seams, and his original idea was he was going to start building his own pontoon tubes.
Okay.
And that was what he was going to do, was build those pontoon tubes. But he never would, like, I don't think he realized what a roller and all that stuff was going to cost him to roll the aluminum. And the majority of the repair work what he needed was a TIG machine. And he had a TIG, an AC/DC TIG machine. The problem was it was like the Lincoln Square Wave 200. And it just wasn't it just didn't have enough. I mean, I was on my torch hand, I was wearing a stick glove, so a very heavily insulated welding glove on my one hand, and then I was wearing a regular thin leather TIG glove on the other hand to feed filler wire, because I would get the TIG torch so hot that you couldn't hold on to it. I kept telling him we needed to get and that was where it come into me renting him a machine. We got into some aluminum that his machine, it just didn't have enough amperage to do it. So I had to rent him a machine for one particular job. We were welding, we were building a pontoon in what they call heavy hat, which is what you use to build the structure for the deck on a pontoon, the substructure. We were building one that was a little wider than normal. So, and the heavy hat that he bought only come in a certain length. And we had to add, I don't even remember, like 10 or 12 inches to each piece of this heavy hat. Well, that stuff's like 3/8 thick. And so he didn't have a welder that was heavy enough, even with the prep work, beveling it and all that stuff. That 200 amp TIG machine, I could get through a couple pieces, and then you had to leave the machine sit and cool off, and it was like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
So I rented a machine to do that, and I kept telling him, sell that 350 MP, unless you're going to buy a roller and we're going to start making tubes. Get rid of that and buy a TIG machine. Something that was water cooled, something that was at least 250 amps, had enough duty cycle to do the kind of stuff we were actually doing. And he finally sold the 350 MP, and I don't know if he spent the money on hookers and blow or what, but that money just disappeared into the ethos, and we never got another welder. And so I kept doing repair work with that little Square Wave 200, which most of the time on a pontoon tube, that stuff's only like 135 thousandths thick. So it was good enough. I mean, I could do a crack repair on a tube or weld bungs into a tube, put new end caps into a damaged tube, stuff like that. But when we get into doing fab work, where he was building custom pontoons, that got a little sketchy. And he finally, and I got him prices on like a Lincoln machine and a Miller machine. And when he was looking to sell that 350 MP, and he was like, give me some prices on stuff. So I got him prices on stuff. And nothing ever happened. Like I said, the money just all of a sudden vanished. He didn't have it anymore.
I think that's that guy's Achilles heel, though.
Yeah.
In business.
It was. But one day I was in there working on something, and I hollered at him because it's like, dude, you got to get a better machine for what we're doing here. I was like, you're paying me a bunch of money, and I'm sitting here waiting for the machine to cool off. I'm hitting a duty cycle on this thing. I said, we're going to cook it.
Yeah.
And he finally made a comment to me. He was like, well, if you could find me a machine like what you're talking for less than $3,000, I'd buy it right now. And I thought he was just blowing smoke up my rear end. I really did. And I had run, not a lot, but I had run an Everlast machine. If you don't know what an Everlast machine, a welder is, they're a Chinese machine, but I'll be honest with you, I own 2 of them, and they've been really good machines. And I told him, I was like, well, here, you can buy this one. He says, it's, it'll do 255 amps, it's water cooled. And I says, we can have it in 3 days here, and it's under $3,000 shipped. And he was like, send me the link. And I thought, oh, yeah, I know where this is going. He called me, it was 4 days later. He called me. He says, hey, I need you to come by. He's like, the new machine's here. I need you to get it set up so we can, start doing some stuff. I couldn't believe that he really did it. Yeah. And sure enough, I got there. And a brand new machine in the box, water cooler, TIG machine, the whole 9 yards. And that was great, because after that, it was just, I don't know, it was a lot easier to do work for him. But yeah, so I stayed busy working for him through COVID, and which was nice. I was actually only working for him. What was I working? Tuesday, because I didn't, with having that much time off, I remember I liked having some time off. So I told him, I says, I'll work 10 to 3, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I will not work on Mondays or Fridays. But I had to have time to do the stuff I had coming in at my shop, too. And it worked out good, because, heck, I was making as much money between doing stuff for him and doing stuff here at my shop. I was making as much money as I was working my regular job. So it worked out good for me. And then somebody was like, hey, this place I'm working needs a mechanic. You should come talk to him. And I wasn't going to do that because I had no desire to go back to being a mechanic. But right before I got called back to work, you convinced me to finally at least hear him out.
Yeah.
And so I got with the HR guy and I talked to him on the phone. And he set up a thing with a guy at the store that you worked, the dealership you worked at. I went and talked to them. And I just made up my mind when they were like, well, what would it take you? I threw out a dollar figure. I had never been paid as a mechanic. And I thought, there's no way anybody will pay me this. And the guy was like, yeah, we could probably, that wouldn't be an issue. And I'm like, are you serious? And so they were like, of course it had to go through the chain of command or whatever. And I don't know, it was the next day or 2 days later, they called and offered me a job. And at that time, I had gone back to work at the boat place that I worked full time at. And I was like, I really don't want to do that. And we had only been back to work for probably a week. Because I'll say they offered me the job like on a Wednesday. And I told them, I was like, well, give me a couple days. I want to talk it over with my wife. You know, I don't make a decision like that without her. And I remember on Friday at the boat place where I was working full time, they were like, yeah, we're probably going to get laid off again in the fall. Because they weren't sure what was going on with, you know, after COVID, and they were already talking about shutting stuff down again. And and I was like, nope, ain't doing that again. It was one thing when because I had plenty of money saved up. So like I had a good stockpile in my savings, but like the first couple of weeks being laid off, I had to take some money out of savings, and I knew from the time we went back to work to us being off again, if I didn't have that income coming in like I did the first go round, I knew I was going to have to pull money out of savings, and that drove me bananas. And I was like, I ain't doing this. So at lunchtime that day, I went out on my lunch break. I called the dealership that you worked at, called them back, and says, I can start in 2 weeks. And I went back in and put in my notice. And then, yeah, I didn't even work there as a mechanic for a whole year.
No.
I only mechanicked for, 8 months. And then you were service manager, and then transitioning out of service manager into a service truck. And I was working as the interim service manager. And then wound up becoming the service manager. And that was, I know you had some issues with that place, and I don't blame you for having that.
Not with you being a service manager, though.
But some of the stuff they wanted me to do, it was not a good fit for me. And I got a phone call, and it was funny. It was a place that you'd gone to work, and you called. You'd been sending me pictures that week, a weld test.
Yeah, all the fails.
All the failed weld tests. And so I get a phone call one day from you saying, hey, you want to come over here and do this weld test? And I thought you were just like wanting me to like prove it out or something. I didn't realize I was going to actually do a weld test. Because I got there, you weren't there. I went in and talked to your boss. And it was funny because he was like, I went in and did this weld test. And I'm like, the one part of the weld test, they wanted me to MIG weld. It was 3/4 inch black pipe, schedule 40 black pipe. And there, I was like, what's the procedure you want me to use? He's like, we just want you to weld it. I was like, well, what have you been having everybody do with? He's like, well, with the MIG. And I go in and look, and they got 045 wire in the MIG. I'm like, this is going to be, I mean, I'm not saying it ain't doable, but this heavy wire, this thin wall pipe, it's not really an ideal combination. But I did it. It turned out pretty good.
You beat everybody else.
Yeah, they offered me a job.
And then, of course, you went back and forth on that one.
Yeah, I struggle with that. I wasn't sure I wanted to change jobs because I was doing all right as a service manager, but I definitely rather been working than managing people.
Yeah, and it was a hard time too, though. It was the Great Recession. They're not recession, whatever they were calling it. But you couldn't keep a mechanic.
Yeah.
Money couldn't keep people anywhere.
Right. Yeah, because everybody, you could go at that time as a mechanic, you could go here and they were offering this much, and the place 2 doors down was offering $2 more an hour, so everybody was jumping ship and going down there.
Yep, and nobody cared what they said when they left, and
nope. And so it was just like, yeah, because so many people still had that opinion that mechanics were a dime a dozen. And, well, the best part about COVID was people figured out mechanics, tradespeople, period, are not a dime a dozen. I don't care what trade you were in.
Yep. I think COVID definitely took something that was going to happen within 5 to 7 years and accelerated it, because these baby boomers getting out of their workforce.
Well, and there's a whole bunch of them during COVID. That's exactly what happened. It was like they were getting laid off, and they're like, "Heck, we're close enough. We can just not go back."
That's my wife. She's a nurse, and that was so many nurses retired. It, as good as it was for us, it was twice as good, obviously, for the nurses. But I mean, they solved every problem during COVID. It seemed like HR and everybody was trying to solve it with money.
Yeah.
And it worked. And now I think people just need to realize, okay, there's a transition back to how things used to be.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that turned me off as service manager, was because I was doing was involved with a lot of hiring, and we were getting a lot of younger guys. And like, I remember we had this one kid that come in he was in his mid to late 20s, and he was working at a truck shop, but he had never done heavy equipment or ag work. He'd always worked on heavy truck. And interviewing him, I figured out that he primarily just did like brakes and no major, like he'd done some clutches and some stuff like that, but mainly just listening to him talk, he had done a lot of brake work, which is fine. At least, I mean,
something.
He had some experience, and it's like I'm good with that. I mean, I started out as a snot-nosed apprentice, so co-oping out of a vocational school, so I was good with the idea of hiring a guy that I could train. I got no issues with that. The issue I had was when the HR guy was like, I told him where I know he's making this, so let's offer him a little bit more, so there's some, it's not a lateral move for him. If you're going to hire somebody, you're going to have to give them something other than opportunity to entice them to jump ship.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did. I made a suggestion on what to pay, and then when he gets hired, I find out that they're paying this kid more than some of the guys that I already got working there. I'm like, how in the world do you justify that? I was like, are you going to bump these guys that have been here for a long time up? Which they did some, but not near as much as I think they should have.
And I think that caused all the problem. I shouldn't say all the problem. I think that caused a big majority of their problem. A great thing for mechanics, but there was experience leaving all these places.
Yep.
And you could go across the street and make more money.
Yeah.
And yeah, the all the companies tip their hand that hiring new employees was more important than retaining old ones.
Yeah. So how did you get into the trades?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so I'm pretty much I started not I'm the only one in my family that's a mechanic. I started off on the farm and kind of got a knack for it, and I moved into the dealership world right off the rip, right out of high school. I've worked for a cat dealership, a case dealership, a Komatsu dealership. I've always been, at first I was just a guy that I'd go somewhere, I'd get all the knowledge I could, and I was never shy to ask for a raise, or what do I need to do to make more money. That was the reason I was at work, was to make money. And I'd be told all the time, you need more experience on different pieces of equipment. So that's kind of what I did. I've went to these different dealerships. I had a stint where I worked in the municipal garages. I really liked that. Like me and you, Bob, we became great friends through that. The garages never taught you or challenged you, because it seemed like a lot of the municipalities keep stuff under warranty, and as soon as a big problem would come up, they'd get rid of the truck or get rid of the piece of equipment. But I learned a lot of stuff on the other end of it, the parts end, the buying, the buying of parts, the buying of goods. I learned a lot of that through municipalities, and I kind of took that and worked my way into a service manager job, and it just, I don't know, it wasn't for me. The big problem is I've always been a really, really money motivated person, and I was, I guess the previous service manager to Bob, and I got to see some of the people we were hiring in, and like every person I was hiring in, if I'd work 80% of the hours they did, I'd have got quite a pay raise. And I think my boss knew that it wasn't working out too well with me. I wasn't happy, and so I was lucky enough that Bob was there, and it went into that job seamlessly, so it made it good for my exit. But I left that dealership world. I kind of went dealership, municipality, dealership, and then I went to a large construction company, and that's where I got introduced to the union. And I'm pretty happy I did. I see a lot of good for it. One thing it's done for me is I no longer have to go and look, am I getting paid a good, fair wage? I know I am. I got people in my corner. I really do like that. But yeah, the big construction company, it's nice, and it was during the housing boom. My gosh, the hours we worked, it was just go to work. There's always something to do. But like all things, I was ready to try my own business, and I've always kind of done side work, and I was ready to go full time. I had a real good friend. I'm pretty sure we'll have him on the podcast, because he's just killing it with his business. But I had him in my corner, and he had a lot of work. He wanted to, he was willing to throw some work my way. So I went that route, and I really think I was doing it for all the wrong reasons of starting a business. I didn't have the passion for the business. I just wanted the money. And it just, it worked its way out real quick with me. So I'm working, as a field mechanic for a gas distribution company, and hey, I'm real happy with it. I've told Bob quite a bit. I'm more my own boss now than I've ever been. And that's, yeah. that's where I'm at. I definitely have, I've done this for 21, 22 years. It's all I know. There's definitely days where Bob's golden rule of the 15 minutes of complaining don't take my my pains away, but I don't know. I don't know what my future holds. I'm 41, and there could be the total career change in my future. I'm not sure, but I think not to speak too much for Bob, but it's the trades are, like them or love them. They are a great way to provide stability, provide a heck of a wage. We were talking before we started recording. I get on TikTok at night. That's about the best way to put myself to sleep. But I've been noticing a new hashtag. I think I'm using that term right. But a new hashtag, and it's a 6-figure dirtbag. And oh my gosh, like, if you tell a lot of these people, and it's, I will attribute a lot of it with being part of the union, but the fact that you can, like, pretty much figure on making over 100,000 a year and having great benefits, and that's, you have a skill that was proven. But Bob's a welder. During COVID, welders were still working. Production welders might not have been at first, but shortly after you left, they took off gangbusters.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we the place I worked, I remember it was I talked to the guy that worked in the booth with me, and I remember him talking. That was like, it, we went back to work first part of May, middle of May, and I talked to him. It was probably like I'd been at the case dealership with you for probably 2 weeks, and I talked to Craig, and I remember Craig was like, "Yeah, we're working like 10 hours a day, 6 days a week," and yeah, they just took off because people couldn't. They were buying stuff they could go outside and do.
Oh yeah, and that was COVID. Everybody had to tip their hand because as soon as you show what is essential and what's not, like, they got the point. We're still out here working, and I not that I loved COVID. I guess it about killed me, but the fact I loved going to work in the morning because there was nobody on the roads. It was so easy. You showed up, as a field mechanic. So I'd show up to somebody's job site and everybody's social distance. It was great. I think a ricer just went by. But wherever I was, it was really nice working during that. I think I do think a lot of people seen their worth. I think a lot of people got out of the trades, but I don't know a single tradesperson that didn't buy another house or is really upgrade their life, and that's that's what I want to get across. I guess if there's one thing in this whole series of podcasts or with me, I do have mixed feelings on the trades, and that's just coming from a 20-something year curmudgeon on it. It's beat me down, but there's never been a time I've never had to tell my kids, well, let's just wait until I work a little overtime, or wait until I save something up. They've always provided well for me, and that's what I want to try to get people to understand. Don't listen to those ignorant people out there that are going to tell you how much more they make than their teachers, because they do. You're going to make more than a lot of those teachers you had in high school or whatnot, or even in college. But you're going to work for it, and there's nothing easy about what either of us do. I have friends that are electricians, pipe fitters, maintenance guys, welders. There's not a single one of them who don't ache and creak and all that stuff. This job will beat you up, but it's worth it. It's worth it for you because it keeps you it keeps you in a pretty good shape. You keep mentally smart, and you meet some of the best people. You'll like you, Bob, like me and you. We'd have never met each other, and I don't know, 10 plus years. It's like shit. It's still going pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something I know we're both.
And we still bounce stuff off each other all the time.
Oh yeah, and that is like, it's where else can you go and do this?
I call and ask you hydraulic questions when I run into hydraulic issues where I'm not 100% sure on them, and you call and ask me about putting teeth on a boring head.
Yeah, that I do that way more than I should. I don't. I actually got some shanks I got to weld on the bucket come Tuesday, I think. And that's, but that's for me. I mean, I know is with you, Bob. You're in a shop, and you like it though. You're in a shop all by yourself, and you're surrounded with steel and welders, and hey, that's great. If that's what your stick is, hey, that's great. I like it because pretty much northern Indiana is where I spend my day. It's kind of go wherever.
And I won't lie, that's one thing I actually do miss. You and I recently talked about that. Is one of the things I do miss is traveling around a little bit. I've never had to. Well, I can't say that either. In my career, I've never been gone for like months at a time. I've had to be gone overnight and stuff like that. But I do miss a little bit of the being out and about. Even when I worked at the John Deere dealer, it was like I loved being out in a service truck. Especially, this will sound crazy, but like I love planting and harvest time, and we were like gangbusters because it was fun. I mean, a days flew by. Still set myself on fire on occasion. So
better you in the combine.
I remember during harvest one year, I was laying under a new S620. Well, doing some weld repairs on that, or I don't remember what it was they had break, but I'm laying under that thing, a pile of dust, and I'd set myself on fire once, and the guy running the combine, he was standing there waiting for me to get done so they could finish shelling that field. And I remember after I set myself on fire the first time, I went and got the fire extinguisher out of my truck, and I handed it to him. I says, if I burst into flames, put me out before the combine goes up.
It is. It's always great when there's the work there, and that's one thing I can speak of on heavy equipment. The work's there. That's one nice thing. It's that piece of equipment has no clue if you're in a recession or what, if it's going to break.
No. Well, and I remember, so I was still at the fuel shop when things went to crap in 08, 09.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember everybody complaining about how bad business got. And we slowed down for a little bit. But due to the fact nobody was buying anything new, and us being such a specialized field, doing just injection pumps, injectors, turbos, that type of stuff, man, we were doing all kinds. I mean, guys were not buying a new tractor. They were dragging 40-year-old crap out of the field or out of the woods, putting it back together because they needed another piece of equipment. And man, we never did. I mean, that was the one time I remember listening to guys worrying about this, that, or the other, and it was like, I never really noticed it. Now, granted, that wasn't sounds funny, for a job that was as specialized as it was, it didn't pay crap, but I never went without a paycheck.
Yeah.
And I mean, I knew a lot of folks that were having a pretty rough time, and it was like, I never noticed anything changed.
That's funny though. You say that. That's when I went to the municipality. I was at a cat dealership, and it got deathly slow, and the layoff talks going around, and what do you do? I was 08. I mean, I was fresh enough in my career that I didn't. It's not like now where yeah they can lay people off there and keep me. They ain't gonna get rid of my knowledge. But
Well, and that's the way I look at it too. I don't, even if I was, I mean, I got laid off, and it was like I hadn't been laid off for a week when you started calling me. It's like that's the one thing, being able to weld or wrench. I have never worried about being able to find a job. It's like now, even if something were to happen and I got laid off from welding, I know that I can go someplace else and get a welding job, or if I really need to, one of the benefits of being at the construction company that I'm at, I'm still around. I mean, I deal with mechanics almost every day, and so I may not be working on the stuff, but I still kind of stay in tune with what's going on, so I don't feel like I would be that far behind having to go back to wrenching. And well, as you know, I am not one to sell stuff, so it's not like I keep buying tools, so I still have everything I need to do that job.
oh yeah, and it's I mean I feel as though like with the mechanic end of it, it's a fraternity. I keep in contact with a lot of people I work with, and you hear of a buddy that's looking for work. We're all talking to our bosses like, hey, do we need somebody? I got a good guy, and that's that is a good part of it. You work with some people, and people might leave. You might work in one place your whole career, but your name could be used in all the dealerships around or the construction companies because of the the turnaround that does happen at your shop. People leave, and if they know you do a good job, that's the thing. If you do good work, I want you around me because it helps me get my day done.
Absolutely.
And that's that is the thing that I guess I'm passionate about with the trades. It's a brotherhood, and it don't matter if you're electricians, if you're a crane operator, a dozer operator, a welder, directional bore operator, all those guys, they have each other's backs, and that's the things they don't teach you in high school anymore. They don't want to tell you, there's these trades out there you can go get into, and they'll pay you to learn.
Yep. Well, and it's funny, like you say that. Kind of speaking of that, I know there's so many schools now that don't offer like shop classes and stuff. I know where I went to school, excuse me, where I went to high school, they don't have shop class there anymore, which I think is absolutely asinine. But when I was going, like, I had a couple of cousins that worked in a coal mine, or for a coal mining company, and they were both welders. But even knowing that that's what they did for a job, I never pieced it together growing up that you could just be a welder. Everybody I knew that was doing a welding job was doing it as a heavy equipment mechanic, and they were just doing weld repairs when they were out on job site, or they were working for a company as like an operator or something, but they were the farm kids that knew how to weld, and so they were doing weld repairs that way. Even I didn't even piece together going to vocational school, and we had they had a welding program, and it was like, okay. So it was kind of odd, but I guess that's the big thing. You keep talking about the thing that you're passionate about, and that's the side of it for me that I guess I'm passionate about is showing younger people. As you know, I do a lot with the 4-H, and is showing these kids that there's other ways out there than going to college, for instance. That there's a way that you can earn a good living, and you just got to be willing to work.
Yep. And that's you're not going to BS BS. You're not going to BS your way through the trades. We all know somebody that does, but you give them a couple years, they get ran off. This is a job that you either have it or you don't. And I think we're really.
And the other thing I've learned is like you don't necessarily have to be the fastest guy at it either. You have to be reliable and you have to be good. Mm-hmm. I remember I was working at a John Deere dealership, and there was only 2 of us that were ag mechanics, and I remember getting pulled into the office by the service manager, and he was like, "I really wish I could get more hours out of you." And I'm like, I can only fix it as fast as I can fix it. He was like, "Yeah, but Larry's, the other guy's doing this, he's billing out this many hours and you're billing out this many hours." And I was like, well, like I said, I can only fix it as fast as I can fix it. But then he made the comment to me, he was like, "The only reason I can't really say anything to you about this is like, you don't have any rework."
Yeah.
So is he really actually billing out that many more hours if my stuff's not having rework on it? Wow. So, and that's the thing that always frustrated me. That's why I got out of the car side of it. The whole flat rate thing, that was a racket. Oh, yeah. Unless you were, buddies with somebody, or the boss's nephew.
And there's flat rate guys out there that don't see how we could ever work hourly. I mean, you've seen it both ways. I haven't. I don't see how you could ever be flat rate. You couldn't. I need you to pull those tracks off that machine. We're going to pay you 12 hours for it. I don't care if I can get it done in 6. I mean, because I'm three bolts, away from it taking 18 hours.
Right.
And, and I know that happens with automotive, but, you were like the first flat rate guy I came across that had that. You're like, oh, you can make money, but you have to be friends with somebody.
Or you had to learn, like I'm probably one of the weird guys that learned how to make money on warranty work. And it was because I listened to what I worked, one of the first dealerships I worked at, I paid attention to what the warranty clerk, the gal that did all the warranty claims, I paid attention to what she said. And then I would go through and I actually took the time to read labor times. And I started figuring out that, if you fill out your work order, this is something you and me, I remember we discussed this one time. If you fill out the work order right, you can make a lot more money. And so it was like, as long as you had the wording right and you could document what you had done on the warranty side, because I wasn't the guy that was buddies with the service manager. I've never went and worked at a job to make friends. I've always went and worked at a job so I could provide for my family. That doesn't mean I'm not friendly with the people I work with. That just means that's not the reason I'm there. I'm not there because I want a new buddy to go to out to dinner with or go have a beer with. I'm there to make money. I am there to make money so I can provide and do the things for my family that my family wants to do. And so I never quite fit in. And so being flat rate, you had to figure out how to do what you could do. And but like the guys I worked with at the first car dealership, there was a couple of them guys. I mean, that was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I remember we had guys that were making almost $100,000 a year there. I mean, net 70, like I said, late 90s, early 2000s. And these were guys that were in their mid to late 20s, I guess I should say, that were knocking down $75,000, $85,000 a year as a mechanic. And, and they were doing that working 45 hours a week.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got it's cool with the dealership. You get real good at doing intake gaskets on a 3800 Chevy engine, and you have a problem with it.
Now you're dating yourself.
Yeah. I've never been the flat rate guy, but you get good at that. There's a problem with those. They come in, and as soon as that service writer realizes, like, hey, this guy's getting it done, he's getting it done fast, I can turn these out. Well, yeah, it's your money's just going to start compounding, and that's, I think you'll learn about me. It is a lot about the money with me, but let's just be honest. Like Bob says, that's why we go to work.
Yep.
And that's why we want to, we got a lot of stuff we can talk about, but you'll learn this about us. It's going to come back to work and the trades and what we see great about them, what we see bad about them. COVID definitely it changed everything. And I've worked with some really good guys, I've worked with some really bad guys, but if they've all worked. The good ones, the bad ones, they're all still working, and it's the lazy ones. The lazy ones are the only ones I know. The case dealership you and I worked at, there was a few guys there that they weren't the smartest. They weren't a good fit for it, but they weren't lazy. And one of the guys you and me had to fire is that kind of our transition thing. And great guy, he wasn't lazy, and I'm pretty sure he probably makes more than both of us now where he went. And it's the whole world's open to you. You like welders. I'd love to do a whole podcast on welders. Like these kids at 18 years old have $150,000 rigs, and they're paying them off quick. They're out making on per diem, because that's another thing. Like, you get a job that offers per diem, boys, that's not taxed. That's money in your pocket. Yep. You get jobs like that, take it, get on it. People are going to tell you, oh, you're going to miss out on a lot. Like,
but if you're single and you're, 19, 20, 21 years old, who cares? Go out and gypsy it for a while.
Yeah. And maybe you're lucky enough you find that girl. It's like, hey, I'll go out there with you. Yeah, that's a keeper. She's willing to go tromp around in the mud and watch you fix equipment or however it is, or provides value. That
I'm gonna say there was a fellow that Homer was friends with, and if I remember right, I think they lived over in the Columbia City area. But I know if they had, like in the summertime, if he took a welding job someplace, and it would be done between when school was out for the summer, they had an RV, and the wife and the kids would go with him, and he would still get up and go to work every day welding on pipeline, but he was able all summer long. He was able to work, and he was at home with the wife and the family at night, because they were, they'd just put the camper at a campground, and then my understanding was they took another vehicle, so she and the kids could still go do stuff while he was working. They weren't just trapped at the campground.
Yeah.
But I can see that being a plus too. I mean, because now your kids are getting to see a lot more of the country and experience more things, because I think that's a big deal for people too. Life experiences to me is worth a lot, and I think that experience is helpful, especially in the trades, because it's like, you and me have talked about this numerous times. I don't consider myself an expert at anything, but I'm really good at a lot of different stuff because I've been all over the place. Like I said, we were talking, I've worked flat rate as an auto mechanic. I've worked in an ag dealership as an ag mechanic. When I was at that John Deere dealership, if on the ag side, if we were a little slow, I would do a lot of the compact tractors. So I would help. It was technically considered turf stuff, not ag stuff, but I would help the two turf guys out if the ag side got slow. And so I got to work on all a wide variety of stuff. So I was working on anything from, heck, even lawnmowers. An old 318 Deere to I could be out working on a self-propelled sprayer the next day. So it was good experience, and you got to work on a lot of different stuff. Same with working at the city, because we had such a variety of equipment. I still have a bunch of specialty tools I made for when we were rebuilding leaf vacs. I made all kinds of tooling to pull impellers and do stuff like that. And you just got a lot of experience on that. And like when we were it was after you were gone, but at the Case dealership, it was a Case construction dealership. We did a lot of work for municipalities because in Indiana, the state bid is with Case. So they have you can buy Case equipment on the state bid if you're a municipality. So we dealt a lot with municipalities. And one that we used to go and dealt with for their backhoe, they're like, well, we've got this trailer that's a leaf vac. And I kind of snickered, and they were like, nobody else that we worked with had any clue what to do. But it was like, I could talk at that time I was service manager, so I wasn't going to be the one going up there and working on it. But like, I could talk my field guy through something on it because I knew what the inside of it was like. And so that experience made me valuable because that was something that nobody else at that time at the dealership had any experience with other than me. And, that experience, I kind of lost my train of thought. But anyways, having that vast experience, I think, can sometimes be more beneficial than than being an expert in a given.
Experience trumps education any day of the week.
Yeah.
And I know where you're going on, with the expert. But you said something that if I could go back and my kids, like if today I was 25 years old, we'll say, enough experience under my belt where I go be a field mechanic wherever I want again, and my kids were young, you bet your butt we'd be living out of a camper. I'd be chasing oil guys or out on big pipeline jobs, any of that stuff. Because personally, I'd want my wife to homeschool the kids at this point, but
absolutely,
that's where the money is. If you can discipline yourself and just gonna live rough for a couple of years and come back and buy a house in cash.
Mm-hmm.
I've told my daughter, she's sophomore now, and we talk about vehicles, and we talking to her about money and that kind of stuff. I told her, I says, I don't push her to go be a mechanic or anything. Not that she couldn't. That's not her personality. My younger daughter, it could be her personality maybe, but my older daughter, God have mercy on any person that she'd be on a job site with. But she'll go to college, I would imagine, and when she graduates, I told her once you're graduated, go buy yourself a brand new vehicle, and do that. You got to do that young dumb stuff when you're a kid. Go buy that $80,000 truck as long as you can afford it, because you're going to turn into an adult that has all these responsibilities, and then you got a hoopty beater. It took me 41 years to get back to the point where I got hoopty beaters. And, you know, we always, when my kids were young, my wife drove a nicer truck than I did, but I wanted to make sure my wife and my kids were in something nice.
Well, that was, we've talked about this in the past. That was one of the running jokes when I was first married, was the second most expensive thing that we purchased besides our house was my toolbox.
Oh yeah.
Until 2012, I'd never bought a car that had cost as much as my toolbox.
And you still got that toolbox.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but that's also why, you remember when we first met, it was like, hey, look at this tool. Look at that. Like, look how absurd this tool is that I got that only works on this one. I mean, you being a flat rate guy, or not a flat rate guy, but an automotive guy, you have all kinds of weird ass specialty tools. And that's what's great about being young and dumb and having a tool guy. They'll give you credit for anything.
Yep.
Because those tools you wouldn't have bought, you know, in your 30s because you don't want to spend any money. You get into your 40s, you're so happy you bought them.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you still buy quite a bit.
Actually, believe it or not, the last time I was on the tool truck was 3 or 4 months ago, and it was to have an air tool rebuilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been out there. I need to go out on the Cornwell truck and buy a new needle scaler, because I think I've repaired mine one too many times, and I think it's given up the ghost.
I need to see if Norm's is still in Goshen, because, you know, I don't have a shop to go to. I'm just mobile, and I got a bunch of stuff that needs warranted. But I'll be honest, where my mindset's at right now, I'll weld the wrong tool up and make it work. I mean, 22 years of doing it, there's not much I run across that I don't have tooling for. Polars, and that's.
Well, and I was just doing a job here at the house, 2-3 weeks ago, and that was like, I had every puller I own out there, and they were all too big, so I finally said to heck with it, started grabbing material off a steel rack, and I just built my own puller.
Yeah. That's better than me anymore. I'll look at it like, well, a puller is $900 or the part's $300, and I'll grab the old smoke wrench and get it off that way. I can buy your part cheaper. But yeah, I think this is pretty good conversation we got, and it seems like I would say this is the kind of the path we're going. But you know, Bob and I, we work best with an audience. If you guys got comments or you're thinking we're really screwing the pooch on something, don't be scared to tell us. We will definitely call you out on it, though. But we love the back and forth. You know, if you think you got something you can add, by all means, you know, drop us a line.
We're gonna have to figure out where they're gonna drop that line.
I will give them your address right now.
I don't think that would be good for you.
No. What is your address?
I don't know.
Oh. Well, you can't. That's what everybody says is drop a line. You're telling me all this technology you have.
I haven't. This is new. I'm still trying to figure this out. So if you want to leave a comment, that you have an Apple phone, so you'll be able to look at comments or whatever on Apple reviews.
I can.
And I'll be honest, I watch stuff I listen to everything on Spotify. So and Spotify, you'll be able to, you can leave a comment. We can't respond through those services, but we can at least look at the comments, and we can.
I'm horrible at spelling and grammar, so I'm gonna respond with words, not written down.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying is we can cover some of that stuff. We can go through comments, and then we can cover it here on the podcast. So,
no, it sounds great. It sounds like we're definitely gonna get the word out and hit us up. Let us know what you guys think.
Yeah. And I guess we didn't really cover this in the first episode or in the intro, but this should be, the podcast should go out on pretty much any major podcast platform. I know Apple, I know Spotify, I believe YouTube. Obviously, we don't do video, so it'll just be, I guess that used to be what, Google Music, or I don't. It was something. It's YouTube now, but I guess actually I do too have. I know where we can, and I'll put it in the description below. But if you have any comments, or if you want to email us, you can actually email us through my my email address, which is bobby6guns@outlook.com. So, and that's spelled out BOBBYSIXGUNS @outlook.com.
That's pretty good, Bobby.
All right. Well, I guess we'll call this one here. It was a lot of rambling and babbling, but in all honesty, those are the podcasts I like listening to the most.
Yeah, if you don't like that, it's probably not going to get better.
Probably not. So, anyways, we appreciate y'all tuning in to a BS podcast. I keep trying to screw the name of the podcast up, and I'm the one that named it. That's ridiculous. Anyways, appreciate y'all tuning in. Hope you'll join us again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take her easy.